Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Riley Lewis, filling in for Kara McKinney. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, believes the world is in a bad place. Yesterday, in a speech to the UN General Assembly, he issued a dire warning to presidents and prime ministers from all over the world about the significant challenges currently facing humanity. He specifically mentioned deepening divides in the geopolitical landscape and raging warfare in Europe and the Middle East, both of which could lead to catastrophe for the entire world. And since no one can ever really know when calamity will strike, we must always be prepared. In fact, Western governments are preparing for a possible war in the Middle East right now because the ongoing fight between Israel, our ally, and Hezbollah terrorists in southern Lebanon is rapidly escalating. But we do have some good news to report about that battle. Israeli military officials say that one of their airstrikes on Beirut yesterday killed a top Hezbollah commander named Ibrahim Mohammed Kubasi, who was in charge of the group's missile and rocket force. They say other Hezbollah commanders were also killed in the strike, and Israel is vowing to conduct even more strikes later this week. In light of this recent fighting back and forth between Israel and Hezbollah, the United Nations Security Council discussed the conflict today as well, and many people called for an easing of hostilities. Such calls are somewhat understandable, especially from a global forum like the UN. However, the core problem here is that terrorists in Hamas and Hezbollah will exploit any ceasefire, and we can't afford to run that risk, especially not after this new report from Axios about how Hezbollah urged Iran in recent days to launch an attack against Israel. Joining us now to discuss is Jonathan Feldstein, the president of the Genesis 123 Foundation. Jonathan, thank you for being here today.
Riley, thank you for inviting me. And also, as you did that great intro, just to let you know, the app on my phone is telling me it's not from Iran, but there were just rockets launched at Eilat, Israel's southern port city, presumably from Yemen.
Wow. Okay, that's very interesting. So it seems like things then are escalating pretty quickly. But Iran is really relying on proxy groups to keep this war with Israel going. So do you see things playing out where maybe Iran does get directly involved?
Oh, look, that's always possible. It's certainly possible. I think Iran was embarrassed, even though they had a pretty big attack on us on April 13th with over 300 cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones that were fired at us. Most of them were taken down in the sky even before they reached Israeli territory. They might not want to mess up, but they're also probably trying to play a long game in order that they can continue enriching uranium and going toward the development of a nuclear weapon, which will be a game changer.
Yes, it really could be. And on that note, there are some talks today, some reports about a possible ground invasion going on into Lebanon. What do you think about that?
Scares the hell out of me because my son, I joked earlier with some guests who came here, my son could exhale and be in Lebanon from where he's posted right now. And he'll be one of them. But unfortunately, we're in a war, and while the cyber attacks on Hezbollah, the blowing up of the beepers and walkie-talkies a week or so ago, and the very, very targeted attacks on the the Hezbollah leaders and their weapons launchers is really quite remarkable. Can a war be fought and won without a ground invasion? I don't know. But Hezbollah, matter of fact, I wrote an article today in Town Hall blaming the United Nations because, as you mentioned with Secretary General Guterres, the UN has been allowing Hezbollah to grow in strength and complete violation of Resolution 1701 from 2006. And it's really all because of Hezbollah, because of the United Nations allowing that to happen, that we're seeing today's reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, too, because you mentioned the UN. You think there would be some kind of UN Security Council resolution to condemn Hamas or Hezbollah or both at the same time and approve some kind of mission when it comes to actually dismantling them. But I do wonder here, how strong is Hezbollah at this point, do you think? Because we've seen a lot of their core commanders and senior leaders being killed in extremely precise attacks from the IDF.
Yeah,
So I wonder, please.
No, that's an excellent question. They're still strong. They possess still an estimated 150,000 rockets. You might know this, your viewers might know this, that in Israel for months, for at least half a year, we've been jamming GPS throughout Israel, Tel Aviv, central Israel, all across northern Israel, because many of their precision missiles are GPS guided. They can still do a lot of damage, but they've had a lot of damage done to them, both physically in terms of the weapons and the launchers, but certainly in terms of their leadership. If you think about it, thousands of beepers blew up a week ago, and everyone who had a beeper was at the most senior level of Hezbollah worthy of having a beeper. So they've been set back quite a bit, but I wouldn't underestimate them. I know that we are still here in Israel, the warnings from the Home Front Command continue to get stronger and limit gatherings. Schools are not in session in many parts of Israel. I'll tell you, yesterday I was down along the Gaza border, and I just threw on my GPS to get home, and it took me it wanted to take me a circuitous way that would take me 3 times as long, almost 4 hours, to get home from the Gaza border area. So something's going on. Definitely something going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made some interesting comments here as well, because Hezbollah, when we're looking at this organization, it's not just about what they're doing right now with this group of terrorists. It's about the ideology that they embody. It's about the genocidal ambitions they have that they share with Hamas and ultimately with the regime in Iran. So I do wonder, long term, bigger picture, what can we be doing better when it comes to combating Islamic jihad and the nasty, toxic ideology that fuels it?
Fascinating question. First of all, we need to defeat them militarily, as we've been doing in Gaza, in Lebanon. And by the way, I feel for the Lebanese people. They shouldn't have allowed Hezbollah to hijack the country, but I feel for them. I would also call people to go to our website, solutionforpeaceingaza.com, where we're promoting something that's tremendously radical, because ultimately, in order to defeat the radical Islamic ideology that's imbued in Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis and coming from Shiite Iran, we need to change their hearts. They need to have a change of attitude, better ideas. And honestly, with these people having been indoctrinated for a century in hating Israel and the Jewish people and trying to actually create genocide here and destroy Israel, we're promoting a very radical idea, which I happen to believe is the only solution for peace in Gaza, which is to bring Christians to be responsible for the entire rebuilding and rehabilitation, which will expose Gazans to unconditional love and make Gazans realize that their Allah has failed them.
Yeah, that is a really interesting idea. And what was that website called again for the viewers out there watching?
Solutionforpeaceingaza.com.
Okay, perfect. So I do also have another quick question for you, because we're just about to hit the 1-year anniversary of the horrific massacre on October 7th. And to look back at the response from Western governments, from Western leaders, from the Biden-Harris administration, it's quite chilling to see them accommodating terrorism, apologizing for it, even funding it in some cases still. So what do you make of the response from the U.S. specifically and Western governments writ large since that attack?
Yeah, I'm a proud American citizen. I moved to Israel 20 years ago. I love the United States. I'm very disappointed with, and I will say I'm grateful that the administration, by and large, has continued to provide the military means that Israel needs to conduct these wars. But I will also say every single time, whether it's actual funding or controversial remarks that somehow blame Israel or suggest that Israel is going out of its way to illegitimately kill civilians anywhere, all of that emboldens the terrorists going back to the head of the octopus in Iran. And I just happened to see today the intelligence revealed about President Trump's the attempt to assassinate him, all being fostered by Iran. Americans must wake up and not allow Iran an inch. I believe I have a very dear friend who was born there and sentenced to death once she converted to Christianity. And fortunately, she wasn't killed. But I happen to believe very strongly that every effort needs to be made that the Islamic regime in Iran should be past tense.
Yes, absolutely. That's the big picture question moving forward, because I don't know exactly how you approach that long term, but now that they're developing, working on uranium enrichment, it seems like they're heading for nuclear technology, at least in some capacity at some point in the not too distant future. And I'm just not sure exactly how you handle this sovereign state. It's one thing when you have these terror groups, these proxies, but then to have a sovereign state being the world's largest sponsor of terrorism, that's a whole other question, and I'm not sure exactly how to handle it. So as we come up against a break here, I want to ask you final thoughts. What do you think about, the Iran question and combating Islamic Jihad in the long term in that sense?
The West needs to do everything possible to weaken and demilitarize Iran, regardless of whether it's a sovereign state or not. We have tens of millions of Iranians who desperately want freedom. They've grown up in 45, almost 46 years now, not having any freedom whatsoever and living under the heel of this Islamic regime.
Yes.
I believe that if we press the Iranian regime, the people will follow, and that will be, please God, the end of the regime.
Yeah, I believe you're right about that. And then maybe we can finally see some kind of peace in the Middle East, peace through strength that really will be built to last. Having said that, I do want to say we're out of time, so thank you very much for your time. I'm sure you're very busy, and we're praying for you, and we're praying for Israel and the people of Israel as well, and really the people of the whole world, because Islamic Jihad poses a threat to everybody, but of course its own proponents. So thank you again for being here. We really do appreciate your time.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. God bless you.